All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. My name is Pete Deely, and I'm here with my professor, Professor Lucas Hubo. Professor, good to see you
Hello,
again.
everyone. Great to see you, Peter. How are you doing today?
Well, I came here anxiety filled because I don't want to get fired from my job here at the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. And then last night at 10:30 at night, one of our local Chandler community members, Alex, bought a bag of jujitsu, or excuse me, of submission coffee. So I'm
There
I'm
you go.
I'm alive for another podcast. Um, and so, as you guys know, Submission Coffee, if you go to submissioncoffee.com, it will take you to where we sell those. And I think that brings us to, well, we need 25, or we need 20 more subscribers, Professor. So I'm on it.
We're getting there little by little, man.
Little by little. We are lucky today.
Awesome.
We are lucky today. We have a guest that we could talk to, I'm sure, for hours and hours and hours. He's been fortunate. We're fortunate enough that he's put aside about 45 minutes for us to talk to him. He's a gentleman that you may have come across in other podcasts because he has an amazing amazing message, set of things that he wants to teach other people. His name is Professor Freddy Trillo. And Professor Trillo, thank you for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege, and something that I really welcome because I want to get my message out to everybody.
Awesome.
And Professor Trillo, we know you have a long and storied career, and there's a lot that we could talk about that sort of would go through all of that. But I'm going to just give a little synopsis, and you can kind of add to it should you want anything important to be a part of how people will listen to you going forward here. But there's a 30-year career in law enforcement where you were part of among other things, a SWAT team. And as I understand it, this time in your career, you're instructing and teaching, particularly in the Miami police force, and I believe the Miami-Dade police force. I've heard a little bit about the robbery intervention detail that you've been instructing folks on. So as a practitioner for all those years, as a law enforcement officer, and now as a reserve officer, I know you have a million stories about lots of things that would teach us life lessons. But in that journey, I know Jiu-Jitsu became very central to sort of your experience, both your internal experience and how you're related to the world. And that's kind of where we're going to focus today. But before I ask sort of my first question, anything that you'd want to have the audience know about your background before we get going?
Yeah, my background is really ugly. I'm sorry about that. But I know what you meant. My personal
Yeah.
background, I mean, how should I say it? My personal background, before I get started with the story, my personal background is I started with Conan and Marcelo Silveira, who were under Carlson Gracie, Carlson Gracie Senior in Miami. I started with them. I was with them for a few years, and then I transferred over to the Valente brothers, and I was with them for about 17 years. And I moved away. It was time for me to move on my own. I wanted to go on my own, and I was on my own for a few years. But then I met Professor Tom DeBlas in a local seminar down here in Miami, and man, I really enjoyed Tom. He's a straight shooter, and being me paramilitary, that's something that resonated with me. Something that I understood. Somebody that's it's black and white. You don't have to guess which way he's going to think. Pretty much which way Tom is going to think. And so that's the type of people that I really enjoyed being around and listen to. So we spoke, and he was looking to branch out and create some affiliations, and that's how we got started. I created my academy became a Tom DeBlas affiliate academy down here in South Florida.
Oh, awesome. So now you have a full-time Jiu Jitsu academy.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Awesome.
I started full time in 2014.
Amazing.
And man, we're still going strong. We made it through COVID, everything,
Yeah.
and we're still here. Thank God,
Yes.
Well,
for
I've
all of
been,
us, you
yes,
guys included.
Absolutely.
yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. And your Instagram page, by the way, I really love because you're very thorough in your conversations there, and is a great way to get to learn about you. And if there are folks that are looking for an academy in Miami, we'll make sure later on we indicate how to find you. And you use an expression that we
Thank
use.
you.
We use it. You use an expression in that introduction that we use all the time here. That notion of getting comfortable when you're uncomfortable. And I think that's common throughout the whole jiu-jitsu community. And so I'm curious to ask you this first question in that when you came to jiu-jitsu in the beginning, I doubt that you were a stranger to physical conflict. Like you would have had experiences at variety levels of danger, probably lethal levels of danger in your life prior to that. And so as you come to jujitsu, I came to it as about 52. I came to it as a 50-year-old man. For me, this is a
You're
experience.
young.
I'm just a kid. I'd like to remind people of that. But it comes to me as a way to get to know myself, be a part of a community. It in application is largely just a sport application, but for you come to it, it matters to you in a day-to-day manner. So I'm curious in your jiu-jitsu journey, how it changed your mindset, and particularly in your job, and how things were different for you after studying jiu-jitsu. And you had such amazing teachers, obviously, all along, and how it changed you and your relationship to your job, perhaps your relationship to the people that you were both working with in your job.
Well, I guess before I mention how it changed everything, I need to go back and explain how it was prior to jiu-jitsu.
Excellent.
Okay. So I was a rookie officer in 1992. Okay. I was working for a local department down here in Miami, Florida, called the Opelika Police Department. It's a very small department, one of the smallest departments in all of Dade County. But in 1992, that small department had one of the highest crime rates in the entire nation. So it's a small city, just a few officers,
Mhm.
but that small area was condensed with crime. A lot of drugs, a lot of murderers, a lot of rapists, a lot of good people too. I can't throw everybody under the bus. There's a lot of good people that just happened to grow in that environment, but the city was plagued with violent crimes,
Hmm.
and that's where I started because I originally applied for different departments. And when you're brand new, you don't always have the luxury of like, let's say I wanna get into this big department. Well, so does 1,000 other people. So your
Yes.
competition to get in there is not always that easy. But
Mhm.
it's a lot easier to get into smaller departments. And then after a couple of years, you can transfer over. Makes
Mhm.
the process easy. So that's how I started. I started with, and I was in my early 20s, and I got in with the Opalaka. I was a new officer. I
So,
thought,
Professor,
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you. Are you from Miami? So when you got
Well, I was raised in
okay,
Miami.
my question is, when you got there on that small department, were you already know about that area, or something that it kind of like happened only after you were there and like, oh my God, where I am, what is happening
Hmm.
here?
Well, here's the thing. That's a very good question. No one's asked me that question. No, I didn't. I did not know a lot about Opalaka
Yeah.
because Miami, like every city, you have the north end part of the city and you have the south end, east and west.
Mhm.
So I was a young man and I grew up in the south end of Miami. So I never really went to the north end of Miami.
Okay.
I heard about the department, but I didn't know that it was the highest in crime. I didn't know. I didn't know any of that. So when I got in, it was a shock, but it wasn't so much of a shock because I didn't grow up with a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Single family home. My mom was barely home, so I pretty much grew up alone,
Mm-hmm.
and I was I grew up during I would say it was a great youth program for me because I was always in the park. I was always
Mm-hmm.
into sports. That's something that you don't see so often nowadays, these kids with these
Yes,
video
yes.
games, but that's another story. But
Right,
anyway,
right.
I grew up in the park. So I would go to school, and the moment I would get home, it was straight to the park. And I would stay there for hours because my mom wasn't home. So I would just play football or basketball or whatever. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
soccer, it didn't matter. We could have played tennis, it didn't matter. The
Mhm.
the point was that I grew up in the streets with those friends, and we weren't out there committing crimes, but you grow up in the streets, you know what's up. You
Yeah.
learn. You know what good and who the good people are, who the bad people are. So
Uh-huh.
I wasn't I wasn't naive to crime, and I had some friends that committed some stuff on the side, and I could hear them because they're your friends. You don't have to
Yep.
participate with them, but they're still your friends, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I had street sensibility. So going into Opalaka, it was not a hard transition for me because I kind of knew what was up.
Mm-hmm.
But I also thought that going to the police academy, I also thought that the police academy was going to prepare me for everything that I was going to face in police work,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they were going to teach me the best self defense, the best striking, the best takedowns, the best how to handcuff people. I thought I was going to get the best training possible. And that was so far from the truth.
Mm.
It was quite the opposite. Nothing, absolutely nothing of the physical defensive tactics that they showed me in the academy prepared me for
Hmm.
what I was for what I encountered as a rookie officer.
Wow.
So, make a long story short, it's a long story, but I'll try to condense it. I pulled over a person. I'm just parked on the side of the road, waiting for the next call, and the calls are always coming in. But I see this guy, and he blows a stop sign like right in front of me. I wasn't heavy on traffic, never have been, especially in Opalaka because there was so much crime. There was no time to sit there and
Right.
do
Yeah, yeah.
traffic enforcement. What
Right.
is that? Yeah, you always responding to a shooting or something.
Yeah.
Right.
So this guy blows the stop sign in front of me, and I'm like, oh, okay. I hit my emergency lights and stuff. Now, here's the process. Whenever you're going to take a traffic stop, because he had done it so fast, I had to speed up quickly to him. So as soon as I sped up and I hit my lights, usually you have a few seconds so you can call in the traffic stop. You tell your dispatcher, I'm pulling over such and such car at such
Mm-hmm.
and such location so that everybody knows where you're at. Well, that didn't happen because the moment I sped up, he actually started to slow down to a stop. Even even before I activated, I do this for the emergency lights, so
Uh-huh.
they pull over. So right when I'm switching my emergency lights, he slams on his brakes, stops his car, and now I'm behind him. I had to stop quickly, and
So
he
something
exits the
suspicious
car.
right there.
Yeah, that's not common. That's not common. Most of the time, the bad guy doesn't even want to stop. He takes off.
Right.
So, but this guy stops, and instead of walking away, he actually starts walking towards me. Now, again, I had street sensibility. I knew something is up here. Like the spider
Mm-hmm.
sense
Right.
told me, man, something is about to happen here. You get that feeling inside. There's something wrong. There's something wrong here. This is not normal. So I exited my car quickly because if I stay in the car, I'm a sitting target. I
Mm-hmm.
can't move.
Okay.
And if he has a firearm or something, he has me. He has
Uh-huh.
me. So I exited my car real quickly. And as I exited my car and I started to make contact with him, he just rushes me. He picks me up, which the academy never told me what to do when someone picks you up, or when somebody's running at you. As always, somebody runs away from you, not running at you.
Right.
So he picks me up and he slams me on concrete.
Mm.
So I hit the ground, and then he does what nobody in 1992 had ever done before, which is he went to mount, ground, and pound. This is 1992. There was no UFC yet.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no Jiu Jitsu, at least not in the US. There was no Jiu Jitsu.
Right.
And this guy, apparently, he knew, because he was a career criminal, he knew that he can mount me, sit on the chest, knees, maybe not perfect hooks, but he didn't need
Sure.
perfect. He did not need perfect hooks because I didn't know how to push him off.
Uh-huh.
So he mounted me, and now he starts just punching away at my face. Again, I had no idea what's going on here. If you could just picture the thought of, from 1 second, you just stop there on the side of the road, and the next second, you have a man that's twice your size mounted on top of you, punching your face. And I'll be honest with you, you don't feel any pain because the shock, it's like the shock hits your body, and your mind is trying to process what's going on. And you feel the punches hitting you, but don't really feel a lot of pain. It's kind of like what you see in the movies. You feel the boom, 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 and you see the lights starting to flicker, and everything is starting to go out. And I remember as he's hitting me, I reached up around his waist and I pulled him close to me because I figure if I can keep him close to me, at least he doesn't have the ability to hit me real powerful. He was just doing rabbit hits now. So when I hold him here, picture me on my back. The guy is on me. I'm bleeding from my nose. I'm bleeding from my mouth. My eyes are swelling up, and all I can see is I'm looking up at the sky. The sky is behind me, and it's bright blue. And the only thing in my mind was like, I cannot believe that this is happening to me.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that I'm about to die here. 1 second, I was just relaxing in my car, and now I'm here fighting for my life. And let me tell you something, Pete and Lucas. That's something that I am sure many people that are no longer with us were also thinking. I cannot believe this is happening to me. Because I've heard near-death experiences, and I've heard other people mention this, the exact same thing that I was going through.
Right.
Except the difference was that something clicked inside my mind. Something said, no, I am not going to go out like this. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. And I didn't know how I was going to fight. But all I said is that I am not going to go out like this. I'm going to continue to fight. And my fight was just holding him until, and that's exactly what happened. He got tired of punching me. By the way, I couldn't get on the radio, our handheld radio that we carry on our hip. He grabbed the radio and he tossed it over the fence. So I didn't have a radio. He grabbed my handcuffs from my...
It definitely wasn't his first time doing something like that, right?
Because a career criminal,
Yeah.
a legit career criminal. This guy has spent more time in jail than he has free. So going to jail was actually going back to where he grew up, basically, because he spent most of his life in jail. So going back to jail is not a problem for these people. But anyway, he threw my radio away. He threw my handcuffs away. I had nothing to handcuff him with. I had nothing. Oh, and he tried. And this is why I'm here today. This is one of the things that I keep emphasizing in my police seminars and to everybody that listens. Officers out there, invest in a high safety, level 3 safety holster, because that is the reason why I'm here today.
Wow.
He could not get my gun out of my holster. Holsters for the firearms have like 3 levels of level 1 is like very basic. There's no real safety, maybe a little strap, very easy to pull your gun out, but it's also very easy for anybody to grab your gun out.
Right.
Then you have level 2s, which are a little bit better than level 1s. They have more restraints, but still not the best. Then you have level 3 holsters, which are top of the line holsters that are very hard, for almost impossible for anybody to take it out if they're not the one holding the firearm and wearing their belt. And that's what I had. I had at the time a Safariland level 3 holster, and he could not get my gun out of my holster. So I want you to picture somebody standing over you. You're on your back, and he's dragging you around the ground by your firearm, which is attached to your belt.
Oh my gosh.
And he's dragging me, trying to pull my gun out, and he couldn't. He couldn't. And there's only one intent in trying to pull an officer's gun out.
Yeah.
That's to kill me.
Right.
He wanted to kill me. Again, he didn't fear going to jail. And to me, this is where the story kind of ends, because he got tired of beating me up, and citizens happened to call 911 and said, hey, you have an officer over here that's getting beat up pretty bad, and he's about to get killed if you don't get over here. And I had heard the 911 calls, and sure enough, people calling in, officer being attacked. And no one knew it was me. All they knew, so when the call goes out, is there's a police officer being attacked, but nobody knows what department or who it is. This is the location. So every officer in the immediate area will stop what they're doing and respond over there. And that's what they did. Officers came in from everywhere, and they happened to take him into custody. So that one incident is what changed my life completely, because I was home for about 3 weeks. I had to take time off. My eyes were swollen shut. I couldn't see out of my eyes. He broke my teeth. He broke my nose. I needed reconstructive surgery. It was really bad for me. But it was an eye opener, and it was something that God knows what he's doing. And sometimes we question why things happen, and we don't realize that he has plans for you. And I guess his plan for me was to use me as a tool to highlight jiu-jitsu, the importance of jiu-jitsu for law enforcement.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I started looking for some form of martial arts training that would give me the skills that I needed to do my job better, because the police training failed me big time, and it's failed many other officers that are no longer with us.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's so unfortunate. But it was a couple of years later where the first UFC came out, UFC 1. And I remember I was sitting in my friend's living room, and they had called me over, said, Fred, hey man, we're going to watch these fights. These guys are going to fight in the ring. It's different arts, jiu-jitsu, karate. I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. Nobody knew what jiu-jitsu was. All they knew that we kept hearing some jiu-jitsu, and then the sambo guys, and then the karate, and then the boxers. And we, like everybody else, we looked at all the people and like, oh man, the biggest guy is going to win this. Right. Look at all these little guys. They're all going to get destroyed by the heavy guy. And I remember sitting there in that living room and watching Royce Gracie, just one by one, just one fighter after the other. And this was in the early UFCs. Remember, it wasn't like it is glorified now, where you get to prepare for one fight. Okay, you're fighting this one guy, and you have months to prepare for that one guy.
Right.
Well, back in that UFCs, how many fights? Sometimes you fought more than once.
Right.
Those guys, like nowadays, the athletes, they do maybe 3, 4 fights a year, and Hoysel's doing three a night, right?
Yes, a night,
Together.
dude.
No
So you had
gloves,
to fight
no
one. If you
time, no
won, you had
weight.
another fight. It was crazy. But see, that is what caught my attention, because I remember sitting there in that living room and I was like phased. I was like, I have no idea what this Brazilian guy is doing, but whatever he's practicing, that's what I need to practice. I need that. I need some form of grappling. I knew it was grappling. I knew it wasn't striking,
Right.
because my strikes were ineffective. Actually, I didn't even throw one strike because I didn't have a chance.
Right.
Because when a fight is that close,
Mm-hmm.
when somebody starts clinched up,
Right.
there's no room for striking.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that was doing striking was the bad guy on me. And
Right.
that's from the mount, where he was able to generate some. But from the feet, I couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I have to find a jiu-jitsu school. So I found a jiu-jitsu school, which was with Carlson.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it would take me like almost 2 hours by the time I leave my house to drive to the location where they were teaching. But to me, time was not an issue, because again, I wasn't supposed to be I wasn't supposed to be here. I
Right.
was
Right.
supposed to be dead.
Yes.
So I knew I needed to do whatever I needed to do to learn that. And I went, and just like everybody's story on their first jujitsu adventure, when you first walk into the mat, you know, they put you with the smallest guy in the academy. And you're like, oh, okay, I get the smallest guy. Well, that smallest guy is the one that ties you up like a pretzel and makes you a believer. And then it gets you to the point where you kind of look at the big guy and like, oh my God, if this little guy did this to me, imagine what this animal would do to me. You understand? So, so that's how I got started with jujitsu, man. And I never ever stopped to turn around. So when I signed up to the academy and they said, "Hey, it's a year commitment," I go, "Year commitment, brother? Sign me up for life, because
Yes.
I am never stopping jujitsu."
Right.
And that was, man, that was in 1990. I don't know when the first UFC came out,
I think it was
1993.
93, right? 93, 94. Yeah.
And I started training like almost immediately. 94, I found the school, and
Jeez.
I have never ever stopped since. And so once I started training jujitsu, it did not take very long to see. It was almost instantaneous. Like literally from day one, I'm like, oh my God, this is how you do the mount. This is how you control the side mount. This is the guard. This is
Mm-hmm.
how you get past a guard. I go, none of this stuff was taught in the academy.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, nothing was taught in the academy pertaining to ground fighting. It was truly amazing that you would think, being in the US, we would have the best training, and it
Sure.
was not true. And
So
so go ahead,
well, yeah.
go
So
with your question, because I'll talk
you have
forever.
this you have this traumatic near death experience in the course of a job that you intend to keep. And I mean, it's not like you have this trauma and then you go, I'm never doing that again. You lean into this tragedy that you survive from. Now you pick up these other skills that are equipping you differently to go back into potentially other very dangerous situations. And I know you have physical skills now that kind of teach you how to react. If you had been in that same situation that you were in that traumatic situation, but you had been training for some time in jiu-jitsu, it would have been a different dynamic between you and the attacker. How did it change the way you felt and thought about the job once you picked up those physical skills, those new ways of kind of protecting yourself, keeping yourself safe? And what happened? What happened to the way you thought about things and the way you felt about things in the course of your job?
It changed everything. everything changed from the way I think, from the way I behave, from the way I looked at subjects, because that's what jiu-jitsu does. And you know, it teaches you jiu-jitsu, if done correctly,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about fighting. It's all about self-defense. It's not jiu-jitsu wasn't created to be just celebrated on a sport mat,
Right.
Yeah.
which I have nothing against sport. I think sport is great. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But the original purpose of jiu-jitsu was for fighting.
Right.
So I felt that jiu-jitsu had absolutely everything to prepare me for police work. And it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. Because it has striking, it has wrestling
Mm-hmm.
takedowns, it has judo takedowns, it has a jiu-jitsu, it has everything that you need. I mean, that's why we're all believers of
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu. It had everything. So it changed everything on how I approach my police work. And I never, ever once had another issue
Mm.
with anybody remotely close to putting me in a bad position. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
literally zero. Think of the first time, and not just you guys, but the ones that are the people that are listening. Think of the first time you stepped on a jiu-jitsu mat, and they put you with one guy, and you felt lost.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh my God, I can't get this guy off of me. I can't do anything to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how the bad guys felt whenever I would grab them. And believe it or not, it's like, how should I explain? It was easy. It
Right.
was very easy. I shouldn't say it, but it was very easy. When you go against somebody that has no idea what they're doing,
Yeah.
I mean, think about this, man. If you train jujitsu for at least a solid year, how is that Walmart attacker? Sorry to mention Walmart, but just in general,
Right. Right.
how is that guy that's never seen jujitsu in his life, never wrestled, never done anything? How is he going to go up to you and grab you? From
Yeah.
where? Because if you train all the time and you spend hours on the mat sparring with other jiu-jitsu guys that we're trying to submit each other against people that know how to submit us. When we go against somebody that has no idea, it's so
Mm-hmm.
easy. There's no way they can grab you that you won't be able to get away from.
Yeah.
That's
And
one.
yeah.
Two, you can control them, and a quick takedown to the mount. How are they going to get out? How?
Yeah.
They're going to do everything that you did as a white belt, trying to push them, and what you easily get arm barred, or you get your back taken, or some submission, or you just flat out get tired within 30 seconds,
Yeah.
right? So the big thing was that in police work, I didn't have to do any submissions because there are no submissions in police work. There's no tapping.
Mm-hmm.
So most
Right.
of
Right.
my
Right.
matches, most of my apprehensions, um, I like you mentioned earlier, Pete, that I have a lot of stories.
Yes.
I have probably put out, if I had to estimate, I've probably put over 100 people to sleep
Yeah.
in the streets.
S-
That is a
That's
lot, a
yeah.
lot, a lot of people.
Ki-
And how many use of force complaints do I have for that? None.
Zero.
I have some complaints here and there, but not by I wasn't hurting anybody
Right.
Mhm.
because I never hurt anybody. I
And
would take
that's
somebody down. Go ahead.
no, please.
I would take someone down, mount them, 30 seconds, which is the number I give them, because they try to push you off for 30 seconds. When that doesn't work, what do they do next? You know it.
Mhm.
They turn around, they give you the back. It's human instinct. We turn around, we get in the turtle position, and they try to stand up. But every time
Yeah.
they turned, they were telling me they wanted to take a nap. So I would facilitate them.
And those things is something that's amazed me so much, and still nowadays about jiu-jitsu. It's not just the amount of control that you can have under someone, especially that doesn't know jiu-jitsu, but also so have your techniques, your movements that will lead you to that, but also the prediction on what the aggressor will do, right? Like you said, you know an amount. When you start to apply that pressure, eventually they will turn their back. It's natural, right? Or how they're gonna throw one punch or the other. So you cannot just have the confidence on I have the technique to deal with this, but you already can start to see what's going to happen next. And as you mentioned, the choke is. I wanna ask you, what changed, if you have seen a change since those early days you started jiu-jitsu till now in the police officers on how much they know jiu-jitsu and how much the department or the city invests on that. I went to teach jiu-jitsu and self-defense class to one of the police departments around our area here. And the first thing that they asked me was to make sure I'm not teaching any type of chokes, because chokes, especially of that episode that happened a couple years ago, you will see as such a bad thing. So I want to see if you see any difference from that.
Great question, and that's a good question to I don't know how many minutes we've gone on, but that's a great question. We're approaching the end, I guess. The culture of police training has changed. Has gotten There's a lot more jiu-jitsu being taught. When I first started, another thing, I was probably the first officer in Dade County, South Florida, to get my black belt.
That's amazing.
I was the first cop to be a black belt. I don't know of any other cop. I look at all the old timers. I know them. We know everybody down here. I don't know of it. There's plenty of guys. There's about 10 guys, 10 other cops that started with me. But I was the first to get my black belt. And so back then, it was very hard to get the department to believe in jiu-jitsu. So we had to change the culture of how police training is done, because the police training, at least here in the state of Florida, was based off of the 1970s Bruce Lee era striking.
Right.
Okay. Somewhere upstate, where they, at a round table, you had a group of martial artists, law enforcement martial artists, that said, we need to put together a self-defense curriculum for the state of Florida. And in that circle, you had a bunch of kung fu, karate, and it was all striking arts.
Yeah.
It was all striking arts. So give me a few techniques that we can use to put in here. Now you give me some. So everybody inputted a bunch of garbage, because that's what it was, a bunch of garbage. And I'm sorry to offend these guys, but that was flat out garbage. And so that was the mountain that I had to fight to start creating change.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was in 2003, in the early 2000s, I did a seminar at the Miami-Dade Police Department, and they brought in I remember one class, they brought in 60 participants. 60. And I wasn't a black belt then. I don't know what I was, blue belt, purple, I don't know what I was, but I certainly wasn't a black belt. But it didn't matter, because, blue belt against no belt, it means a lot. You get through a lot. So I had to go through 60 people to get them to believe in jiu-jitsu for that one seminar. And we had to do several of those. It was insane. It's not like I was sparring everybody.
Right.
We would pick like positions, like the mount, go on your back. Your job is just try to get me off. It's just simple stuff like that. And cops, big, small, all sorts of sizes. So that was a mountain that we had to fight. We had to put in the work to get people to start believing in jiu-jitsu. And nobody in the ranks is, your chiefs and stuff like that. Obviously, nobody up there knew jiu-jitsu. But slowly, as the years go by and more jiu-jitsu academies started to open up, and more people started to train jiu-jitsu, and then those people slowly started to get hired within police departments, and they were able to start spreading the word, hey man, we should start teaching jiu-jitsu in our departments. So slowly the mushroom effect started to move around.
That's
And
awesome.
now look where we are now. We're doing podcasts on law enforcement
Yeah.
for police. We have certainly made extreme progress, but as we know, there is so much more to go. There's so
Mm.
much work to do.
Yeah.
So I like to think myself as one of the pioneers on
Yeah.
helping getting this ball rolling.
Without a
But
doubt. Yeah. And so if there's a situation where there's people in an altercation, like and they're not calm, approaching that situation as a calm member of that immediate community, right, seems to me to have an impact, right? And I'm curious, like, with these skills and this knowledge that you have a different way to protect yourself, when you were in those future confrontations, you've picked up your jiu-jitsu skills, you've recognized that you have an advantage over bad guys that you didn't previously have. Did it make you a calmer person? When we talk about being comfortable in uncomfortable situations, did it play itself out in that manner? Like, were you more relaxed and calm in situations that might have made other people tense and jumpy? Because speed to action's a term I've heard you use, like, you got to make choices quickly. And Hickson Gracie uses that expression, educated instincts, right, in terms of what you might do on the mat. But the consequences of like the educated instincts in those situations, they have to be correct, because if they're wrong, the consequences can be so extreme.
Mm.
And I have found that a calm mind and a calm body usually makes better decisions. So I'm just curious if how that played out for you. Would you say you were calmer for that knowledge as you walked into those dangerous situations?
I would give my some officers heart attacks
Okay.
because I would get so close to people.
Okay.
I literally walk into and the subject is standing there, and I'd walk right up to him.
Right.
But I'm not walking up naive with my hands down.
Right.
I would walk up either like this. Sometimes, most of the time, I'd walk up like this. Now, what does this look like to you? It looks very peaceful to you,
Right. Right.
100%.
right? I'm not walking in. You
Yeah.
called the
Yes.
cops. What's the problem?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
walk
Right.
in, sir. I understand you're upset. You had an argument with such and such person. I'm here to help you out. Now, I'm doing this but I'm right in front of you. So
Right.
I would make the bad guys or whoever I was interviewing uncomfortable
Right.
where
Okay.
I was comfortable
Right.
to the point where they're the ones backing away from me. Or if they do like a bladed stance when they get sideways,
Right.
those you
Okay.
have to worry about because the bladed stance can mean one of two things.
Yeah.
One, he's thinking of attacking you with a sucker punch, or he's thinking of taking off.
Right.
So those are the two common things when they take bladed stance. And when they take bladed stance and they start scratching their head, watch it. Something's about to happen. He's
Right.
thinking of something. So I knew all these little indicators. So I would just mirror people. And if they take a bladed stance, I'd walk around them with my sir, please, what's going on?
Yeah.
But
Right.
see, this is what would give guys a problem, a heart attack, because they're like, aren't you afraid of them hitting you? I go, no. If he tries to punch me, I can block.
Right.
If he tries to go for something, I have my hands right there. If he tries to tackle me, I could stop him. I could, if he tries, I could single leg, double leg. I could do anything. I could frame. I could still retreat and go to my weapon. I have. I was completely comfortable at all times. I see fights. I see confrontations with subjects completely different. And not only that, when you see other officers struggling, you're like, man, he could have easily done this or this or this, and they
Yeah.
didn't have to do all that stuff.
Right.
I
I
didn't even like wearing my taser. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even because to me
Is it
using a taser
escalation?
was like
Right.
cheating.
You're
Why
cheating.
do I need a
You're
taser? I
cheating.
want
You're
to
in
use my
jiu-jitsu.
hands. Yeah,
Well, if
I
I
want to
had to
cheat with
guess,
jujitsu. Exactly.
if I had to guess, that calmness that you brought into those circumstances was its own tool. That there were probably things that you de-escalated because you were coming in with that calm disposition, because you were confident in your ability to anticipate what might or might not happen. And Professor Trillo, Professor Lucas and I, we've got about 7 more hours worth of questions that we would like to ask you, and we would
Maybe
like to
8.
Oh
hear
boy.
maybe
Maybe 8
8,
hours.
and all the stories we would want to know. But we're coming up against the kind of a hard stop here. There are people who are going to hear this and they're going to want to know a lot more about you. So where can folks who hear this short podcast go and learn more about you, and perhaps they might want to come down and train with you? How shall we direct them to you?
Well, I have not been very, very great at the social media, but I'm getting a lot better. They could find me on Instagram. It's pretty simple, black belt badge
Nice
on
black belt
Instagram.
badge.
Yes, yeah. I'm surprised I even found that name that it was even available. I
Right.
was playing around with different names. I'm like, let me try that, and boom, I got it. So whatever, I got that. I
Meant to
got my
be.
YouTube channel,
Okay.
Trillo Jiu Jitsu Academy. You
Okay.
can go on there, and I have hundreds of videos on there. A lot of police videos, but the really good stuff, I probably have it on BJJ Fanatics website
Okay.
because I just actually finished recording my second instructional for BJJ Fanatics, which hopefully will come out in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
And in those videos, it's not like I have 100 techniques.
Right.
There's not that many techniques, to be
Right.
quite honest, because the reality is you don't need that much for police work. You're
Right.
not going to be doing submissions.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference. There's a lot of cops out there that mean well, and are teaching jujitsu, or instructors that are teaching jujitsu to other
Mm-hmm.
cops. But my recommendation, and this is why most places they enjoy bringing me over. It's not that I have the, I didn't win any world champions in jujitsu or any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but what I bring to the table is the experience of having used jujitsu for 10 for I would say for at least a good 10 to 15 years. I had I was using jujitsu every single day. I was part of a high crime suppression team. So when I tell you that I was using jujitsu every single day, is because I was.
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
was at the same time. What I bring to the table is my expertise on the use of force, because that's a lot of stuff you need to think about. You can't just go in there and teach anything to cops.
Sure.
You have
Yeah.
to think what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, how they're going to explain it, how they're going to articulate this, how they're going to respond in a court of law when you have an attorney standing in front of you destroying your story to pieces.
Yeah.
You have to have the right things to say. Those are the
Yes.
things that I bring to the table, because I've been on that wrong side of the table,
Right.
where I know what questions the attorney is going to ask.
Yes. Right.
So that's what I bring to the table. That experience of being burned and how to word things to get around it. Like, for example, many places keep calling the cops, yeah, yeah, you're not supposed to choke. You're right, because you can't choke anybody, because you can't possibly choking is the wrong word.
Right.
You
Right.
strangle people. You
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
choke people. You
Right.
can only choke yourself by getting your airway obstructed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
You don't choke people. So
Yeah.
that's not the right word. We
Well,
strangle people,
right.
but we don't choke people. Little stuff like that is where it separates me from others, because again,
uh,
I've been burned.
Yeah.
I've been
Right.
burned, and I know what they're looking for.
Well, 15
The
years
legal system.
of practicing jujitsu every day, where you're in circumstances where the consequences of it going bad are so extreme. That's I'll put that as there may be a lot of accolades that go with being a sport world champion, but to have used it in such the manner in which it grew up, right? It's meant to be a self-defense piece, to have somebody who has lived that life and protect himself and came away, from things in such a healthier state than you would have been otherwise. I want to say thank you. And Professor Lucas, as we wrap up here, anything you want to say in conclusion here?
No, just thank you as always, Peter, for putting this together. Thank you, Professor Trillo, for accepting our invitation. And it's amazing your stories, everything that I have to share. I hope you can meet again in another podcast or in person for some training. And thank you for everything that you do for the communities in general, right? Law enforcement and for the jiu-jitsu community. Is amazing
Awesome.
work. And for those that are listening to us, if you didn't start jiu-jitsu yet, I don't know what else we can say.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Professor Trillo, part of the conversation on the jiu-jitsu mindset is that Professor Lucas and I believe that, jiu-jitsu is for everybody. And so, there are lots of folks listening that are not in law enforcement, but are in their own stresses and in their own kind of conflicts, and that, being able to be calm and not rattled in those circumstances, would matter to them as well. So again, thank you, sir. And we would love to have you back. We will allocate
Thank you.
much
And
more
if
time next time.
anybody listening wants to have me go over for a police seminar, I would be delighted to do it. I'm in Miami, but we can make it happen. You can reach me at any of the on either YouTube.
Perfect.
I do have Facebook too. I don't use it much, but yeah, I have
Right.
Facebook. And or you could just reach me on an email, Trillo, my last name, Trillo at mail.com. Send me an email and we'll make it work. We'll make it
All right.
work.
We got
Thank
an
you guys for
airport.
having
Yeah,
me. Spread the
Yeah.
word. We
we
need
will.
more cops to be training jujitsu.
Amen.